Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today on the Workforce Gap. We'll just hold it for a few minutes as people start to enter. Can see the numbers going up. So we've still got people arriving, so we'll just give it another minute or so as people are entered into our webinar today on the Workforce Gap. So the numbers are just starting to slow down a little bit on people entering. So we are a couple of minutes. As I say that, it starts again. We've got more people arriving, which is wonderful. I'll just give it maybe another 30 seconds or so, just to ensure nobody's got any IT issues. Okay, we will get going then. So as I said, welcome to our webinar today on the Workforce Gap and champion disabled people in the sport and physical activity sector. I'm Andrew Whitaker, and I'm the strategic lead for the partnerships team at Activity Alliance. I have the pleasure of chairing today's meeting. And just as we seamlessly move across to the next slide, we've got a couple of housekeeping bits for me to cover. So today's webinar is going to be recorded. Captioning is available. As you'll see, your cameras have been turned off and your microphones are on mute, and they'll be throughout. We do have the chat function available, and we've got some team members on board to hopefully answer any questions that you put in there throughout the session. We'll try and do as much as we can today, but follow on with any after that. Okay, so as I said, today's webinar is focusing on the workforce gap and champion disabled people in sport physical activity sector. And today we're going to be hearing from disabled people with various roles, such as research, delivery, system and strategic levels. But we're going to be hearing about their experiences of working within the sector. But why have we come to this topic? So Activity Alliance's latest annual disability activity survey has told us that disabled people are half as likely to see people like me participating, working and volunteering. So within the work lens, I see people like me working in sport physical activity. Only 17% of disabled people versus 43% of non-disabled people see somebody like me. And obviously compared to volunteering, that's 15% of disabled people compared to 42% of disabled people. As I said, this is all from our latest annual disability activity survey. So as a result of that data, we wanted to explore this topic a little bit further, which led us to conduct the Workforce Fairness Gap. I have the pleasure now to hand over to Molly, who's one of our senior researchers at Activity Alliance, and also Esther, who's part of the disability team, to tell you a little bit more about that.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Molly. I'm one of the senior research and insight advisors here at Activity Alliance. I led on this research with a company called Better Decisions Together. So I'll give you a background to the research, and then I'll discuss some of the key findings with Esther, who will share some of her experience. So the next slide should be on why we conducted this research. So as Andrew said already, that we know that disabled people are underrepresented in the sport and physical activity workforce. Disabled people are half as likely to see people like me, as they say, working in sport and physical activity compared to non-disabled people. So this research was a qualitative piece of research, and we commissioned this with the aim of exploring, well, firstly, the reason for this gap in the workforce. So what are the barriers and enablers for disabled people getting into and staying within the workforce? What are the workforce journeys and the key moments? So individual journeys into and through the workforce, those key moments and influencing factors along a disabled person's journey. And then other influencing factors. So beyond being a disabled person, what other factors affect a person's journey into the workforce? So that's taking more of an intersectional approach. And then finally, how employers' perceptions and challenges affect recruitment and retention into the workforce. So that was why we did the research. So our next slide should be how this research was done. So this was a qualitative piece of research. So it looks more at individuals' experiences and their views. And this was done through 25 interviews with a range of individuals who represented a diversity of different types of role, different sports, impairments, their background, their employment status, and so on. There were questions included in relation to getting into the workforce and staying in the workforce and then moving on from the workforce. And this did include examining the barriers and enablers their individual views and experiences along their journey. The next slide is our conclusion. So here I'm going to focus on 5 main conclusions or 5 main findings that we have from the research, and then we'll have a conversation with Esther, who will be sharing her experiences in relation to each point. So the first point that we have here is personal drivers versus reality. So this is where while the research shows that a passion for sport and a desire to want to make a difference within this area drove many disabled people to want to enter and work and remain working within this workforce, there are many significant barriers that still remain for disabled people. So I'd like to ask here if you could share any of your experience with this point.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. Yeah, in terms of my experience here, I had a real passion for sport as a youngster, but initially faced real significant barriers participating in mainstream sport. And I think that was really one of the drivers for me wanting to go into sport as a career, really. And I think just in a simplistic term, I wanted to, get in front of coaches and people in the workforce and encourage them to be more inclusive for disabled people, because I'd had some negative experiences. As a youngster, I had some brilliant positive experiences of sport as well, but initially they were only really via disability sport and disability sport organisations. And although I loved sport, I didn't really feel like I fitted into mainstream sport. And I only ever kind of really envisaged working in disability sport organisations, and I had a lack of confidence to kind of look wider than that. And I wasn't really sure what I could offer, mainstream or, non-disabled sport at that time. And I certainly didn't feel comfortable or confident that I could work in that space. So initially, I think my lack of confidence was one of my biggest barriers for getting into the sector workforce, but really that was due to some negative early experiences as a participant in mainstream sport.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that point. It's really, really useful to highlight that. The next point that we have here is that employers need to create that open, value-based approach to recruitment processes. So this is where typically these sort of barriers are prominent with a getting in stage of entering the workforce, where those traditional recruitment methods and processes aren't necessarily accessible or inclusive for disabled people. Again, Esther, what would be your experience with this point?
Yeah, in terms of getting in phase, for me, I think meaningful and inclusive voluntary works experience played a really important part very early on in my career, and it was important to help me to build those skills and experiences, and also confidence as well. Initially, I started to work again with disability sports organisations, so alongside the qualifications that I was taking, that built my experience and my confidence as well. One of the first roles I took in the sector was I worked with Sport England East Midlands region, and I had a really positive experience, recruitment experience early on. So luckily for me, the interviewers looked at just more than my academic qualifications, and they looked at more than what I'd done in paid employment, and they looked at the skills and experiences developed in a kind of variety of voluntary roles alongside my paid employment. And I know I'm grateful for this opportunity, and that someone, the interview panel looked and understood the wider skill set that I had as a participant in sport. And at that time I was competing at quite a high level, but I'm not necessarily sure that mattered, but it was the knowledge and the skills and experience that I'd gained through my voluntary roles being involved in sport. And they looked at those more than my formal qualifications. And I think that whole thing for me just started that really person-centered kind of recruitment process, and being in an environment where I can be myself at every stage of the process and talk about what I needed.
Thank you, that's a really good point there. And another key finding that we have from this research is that the need for flexible working arrangements to become normalised within the workplace. So once disabled people are within the workforce, they still face significant barriers and challenges, and this can be in relation to accessibility, workplace culture, progression opportunity and development opportunity. But crucially, disabled people still express that commitment and want to remain working within that sport and physical activity workforce. So again, Esther, what would be your experience with this point?
Yeah, I mean, flexible working arrangements have been kind of really critical for me to stay in the workforce. So I have absolutely benefited from flexible working arrangements. But I'll be honest, initially, I only looked at flexible working arrangements through the lens of a parent. So, early on in my career, I did a role where I did a lot of travel, a lot of evening and weekend work, and I would get fatigued and I would need time off. And that was due to my, my long-term health condition as well. And I would need that time off to recharge. But as soon as I was better, I would, kind of dive straight back into, full-time work and, work at the same intensity as before. I think the turning point for me actually was when I became a parent and when I was pregnant. And I think that was the first time that I really considered, or I really kind of remember asking, anyone ever asking me, what flexibility did I need around my working arrangements, due to being a potential parent. And, it felt like a really standard conversation to have in terms of what I was going to need based on maternity policy and then when I came back to work as a parent. And we had a very supportive maternity policy at the time. And so I think over the course of that time, my children are older now, but obviously I'm still a parent. But what I've come to realise for myself is that, as a disabled person with a long-term health condition and someone who's also a parent, those flexible working hours, for me, working 4 days a week is the max I can do, and that's okay. Do you know what I mean? But I think it took me to look at, well, what would a parent have? And I didn't really consider myself before and think, okay, well, what do I need in terms of, being a disabled person? And on reflection, and I've spoken to this, about with other disabled friends that I know both in and out of sector, I know too many people who have had to take a break from work due to fatigue. And actually, on reflection and conversations about it, I think we all think that preventative steps could have been taken. And now I always have flexible working hours wherever I go, and I've got the confidence to do that. But equally, I know that I'm in a supportive culture, and the environment, the workplaces that I ask for, I know they've got that supportive culture and they're overt with that, and so I feel confident to ask. So I think it's very much a two-way process, but that supportive culture and being kind of really overt in what you can offer, I think is really important from an organisation point of view.
Thank you, because that just links really nice to the next point that we have here from the research, is that our participants did spoke about the importance of having that supportive workplace culture. So in order for those employers to retain their disabled talent, employers need to create that supportive culture that really showcases that visibility and advocacy, and it shows that value within the workplace for disabled people. So Esther, what's your experience of this area?
Actually, when I think back, when I was thinking back for this session today, I've always worked for organisations that I've known, or I've known people in, and I know that I feel kind of comfortable. I came back to Sport England in 2021, and I had no problem asking for flexible working arrangements because I had the confidence that that's what I needed, but also in the people, you know, who were interviewing me, and also the kind of stated values of Sport England. I think in terms of visible advocacy, you know, never underestimate the importance of, if you can see it, you can be it. And I've known that in, you know, through other research that I've been involved with as well in different roles in the sector. And again, I think back to when I worked for English Federation of Disability Sport back in the day, Activity Alliance as we know now. You know, I worked with many other disabled people, and several of those were role models for me and mentors, and also some that I've mentored along the way, and I think that's important as well. In terms of kind of advocacy work, you know, I've had some incredibly supportive managers and also mentors in the sector, and I've been encouraged to move outside of my comfort zone by line managers and mentors. I've been given roles and responsibilities that might be outside of my remit, because maybe there's been you know, that there's flexibility to move up hasn't been there, but there's an opportunity there to really develop myself in line with, you know, what my passions and beliefs are. So, you know, being able to develop you know, knowledge and skills, even encouraged to move to other roles in other organisations so that I can, you know, take that next step and make the difference that I want to make, and also kind of training opportunities. So I've been incredibly lucky that I've had that kind of person-centred support along the way.
Thank you, because that does link really nicely to the final point that we have here from the research, is that this research really did highlight the importance of the individual journey being very unique to them and unique to what it means and that definition of success within the workplace. So for some, success might not be aligning with those traditional career milestones you may think of, but it might come more from contributing to that wider purpose and that larger purpose within the work that they do, reclaiming a sense of self in who they are and their work and their life, and then finding fulfillment of work that is meaningful to them and work that really resonates with their personal value. So Esther, what would be your experience with this final point?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been kind of really open and honest about like what my values are and why I do what I do, and I've been lucky to make decisions about where I work. And you know, my real passion is tackling inequalities for, you know, people generally, but disabled people also to access sport and physical activity, and I know how important that is. You know, that's my why. But you know, and also it's not always been about moving up and moving up into, you know, I've stayed in organisations a long time because I've been able to grow in that role, but also know that that's where I'm, you know, kind of making the most impact. I also have to consider, you know, what any role, whether that's moving up or moving on, might have on, you know, my mental health, my condition, and kind of my work-life balance as a parent as well. And that's kind of a really important consideration for me. I think it's not always about pay, you know, and progression isn't always about pay. And we know that additional pay can be complex for several reasons, and may not always suit people, particularly disabled people. but I think it's really important that, you know, you have opportunities to talk about, you know, why you do what you do, and what roles kind of, or extra things people can take on that can make them feel kind of really valued, not only in their work, but the work of the wider organisation as well. You know, development opportunities, chance to challenge ourselves and develop within those roles. You know, and there's a balance there between, you know, recognising somebody for the role that they're doing and give them the opportunity to, you know, really develop themselves further. But, you know, for me, absolutely being part of the workforce in this sector, and just my personal drive to give something back, that's really important to me. So if people can recognise that and support me to do that, you know, that's really fulfilling for me as a person.
Thank you. That was really lovely to hear your experiences and how it highlights many of the things that we find in this research. So yeah, that's our research. So back to Andrew, I believe now.
Yeah, thank you very much, both Molly and Esther there. Appreciate you sharing obviously the research, but also kind of what that means to you, Esther, as well. Yeah, hopefully lots for people to take away and digest there about how we truly try and create a really inclusive workforce, and what the roles employers have to play within that. So my section now, I'm going to be delighted to bring Rob and Pete into the conversation in a few minutes. Rob is a Nottingham-based personal trainer and a coach, and Pete is the CEO of Disability Sports Coach and also board member with ourselves at Activity Alliance. And basically, we're going to have some questions and hear for themselves around how they've championed the voice of disabled people within workforce at both a delivery and strategic level. So Rob, hi Rob. Thank you for joining us today. You were one of the first disabled people to work as a personal trainer for Pure Gym. If you can please just tell us a little bit about your experience. I can see your face now. Your experience as qualified as a PT, and the impact this has made on disabled people.
No worries. Morning, Andrew. So yeah, I'm Rob. I've got 32 years of lived in disability experience after suffering spinal cord injury at a young age. I grew up relatively normal. I went to university and studied law, and halfway through my law course, I decided that I didn't want to be practicing this. And I kind of panicked and thought, well, I don't really know what else I know other than sport and physical activity and disability, as I've always had a keen interest in sport. So I started looking at qualifications that I could kind of do to, you know, help and really make a difference, which is the reason why I got into law in the first place. But you realize that you're not really helping anyone. So I thought I'd go down this route instead. So I started looking at personal training qualifications, and there was an initiative called the Instructability Program that was running at the time, where they were looking at improving the workforce in the fitness industry. So there was coaching qualifications funding available for that. So I went through that course. It was really great to see, you know, a dozen other people with disabilities training to become personal trainers and fitness instructors. When it came to, after we did the course and we got the qualifications, it then looked at getting each person on the course involved in a work placement for 3 months, so they could gain experience within the industry at the same time. A couple of barriers with that one. For me personally, I wanted to be in a mainstream gym. We've already spoke already about representation and how important it is. And I think it was really, for me personally, I wanted to be a personal trainer and not a fitness instructor. So I really wanted to kind of be in one of the largest national gym chains that we have, and really champion disability within that. So there were several barriers and hurdles we had to cross there. It had never been done at Pure Gym before. They'd never had a disabled personal trainer before. So they had to look into, you know, health and safety and legalities and logistics, which opens whole different issues in itself. I understand that, you know, it's great as an employer, they're trying to do everything they can to make sure that they can accommodate, but it just feels like there's always extra steps that you have to take as a person with disability when it comes to trying to get involved in that workforce in this industry. That was a real eye-opener for me. It kind of showed that the industry itself was really under-equipped when it came to disability. And I did spend the first kind of 6 months or so kind of just trying to figure out the industry, tried to figure out where gaps in the market were, tried to see, as a disabled person, not only for myself in terms of how I'm going to work there, but also if I want to start working with disabled clients, which is where my passion lied, what barriers they would have and how to overcome those barriers so that I could best help them from there. I'm not going to lie, a lot of things that I did over the last 9 years or so, I kind of did independently because I realized that Pure Gym themselves didn't necessarily know or have the knowledge that they needed to support. So a lot of it was kind of me being led to try to help the organization grow and help the organization become more inclusive. But that's how I kind of got into the industry. I also did my coaching qualifications for basketball and tennis, as I'd previously played basketball and tennis competitively as well when I was younger. And yeah, for me, it was all about kind of everything I've done in my professional life has been empowering disabled people and getting disabled people involved in sport and physical activity. And I think we touched upon it earlier in terms of how we measure progress. And I think for me, working with my disabled clientele, I'm not always looking at how much weight have they lost or how much weight are they lifting in conventional kind of measures of their progress. For me, it's always a case of, you know, how long did it take for you to do your personal care routine? How much easier is it for you to transfer in and out of a wheelchair? How many more steps a day can you take because you've started doing your physical activity and the work that we've done in the gym? So for me, the parameters that I use to measure the progress are completely different to what you would expect from PTs working with, you know, their non-disabled clients and things like that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Rob. Obviously, lots of people to take in there about your journey and kind of how you're helping to ensure and almost test and learn that pathway that people need to take it, but then obviously showing the impact that makes, as you said, for disabled people with it as well. So yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. You so obviously you're a personal trainer, but you've also become involved with some wider community delivery through our Get Out, Get Active program and part of the Nottingham Deliverers Network. So just wondered if you can just tell us a little bit about your journey there, your experiences, how that's helped to shape those for other disabled people, and also ones that are wanting to volunteer and work within the sector as well.
Yeah, sure. So it's been fantastic kind of working with Activity Alliance and wider initiatives such as the GOGA project over the last however many years it's been now. But for me, it's all about, like I said, extending the reach as much as we can to help as many people with disabilities in whatever way we can, especially when it comes into getting into physical activity and sport. So through the GOGA program, we set up the Nottingham Lions Wheelchair Basketball Club, which was the first wheelchair basketball club in Nottingham for many, many years. And the club is still going strong now. We're a fully registered charity. We've got members. We've got board of trustees. And again, trying to get people involved into the sector and workforce development has been really important for us. So we've currently secured some funding to get some of the members onto the level 1 and level 2 coaching qualifications, so that we're, you know, providing them opportunities to be able to coach wheelchair basketball and develop their own personal skill sets and that kind of thing. So that's been really rewarding. That's been really great. Also through the GOGA project, I had a hand in helping constructing the e-learning platform that's going to be rolling out soon with Activity Alliance, which has been fantastic. That was really great to kind of look over, you know, the nearly 10 years worth of data that we've kind of got through the GOGA program, and it's been fantastic to kind of read the impact that GOGA program has made, and all the research that's been done and how many people nationwide has been helped by the GOGA program, and how many people have actually got involved in this sector in some sort of working development. Because like I said, representation is so important. I mean, even for myself as a PT, it's amazing how many people have kind of approached me when they've seen my videos, whether it be on Instagram or whether through my website, and they say, you know, it's fantastic to see you working out and seeing you in a mainstream gym, and there's no reason why if you can do it that I can't do it. And it really does hammer home how important representation is. But then not necessarily just in the sport and physical activity sector, but a lot of my clients that I've kind of worked with, whether that be through the GOGA program or through the PTing or through the basketball or the tennis, they've actually kind of said to me, like, you know, I feel strong enough, and you build confidence in themselves to actually get back into work in some shape or form. As we know, a lot of disabled people tend not to be in employment, and they're much more likely to not be hired than their non-disabled counterparts. So giving people the confidence and you know, empowering them to be like, actually, I can get involved in work. I've got one client who suffered a traumatic brain injury when he was 17 years old, spent his 18th birthday in a coma. And then he came along to one of our wheelchair basketball sessions just as a bit of a rehab and to help with his coordination. And I've ended up working with him for the last 5 or 6 years now, to the point where he's now doing his accountancy course and he's getting back involved in employment. And, you know, his health has massively improved through the work that we've been doing in the gym and on the basketball court. But also as a person, it's been fantastic to see him grow and build his own confidence to you know, restart his life again, essentially.
Absolutely. Really powerful there around the influence that sport physical activity has on people's lives. And obviously you said being able to see people like me in and around them environments and really ensure that they're inclusive as possible for disabled people. So massive impact there on local level. More obviously I know you, Rob, but obviously even more than maybe what I knew that you was doing as well. So thank you so much for everything that you're doing. Thank you for really driving that change, and just everything that you're really doing, and the free time for today as well.
Thank you so much. Cheers.
Cheers. Thank you. Brilliant. So now we heard from Rob there some great work that Rob's doing locally. We're now going to bring in Pete, and we're going to again just ask him a couple of questions about what Pete's been doing to help to influence workforce diversity at a strategic level. So, morning, Pete.
Morning. Morning, all. Because of my stammer, I'm not your Wi-Fi up going. It's me trying to speak. So just an FYI.
No, not a problem, Pete. So let me ask you the first question then, and we'll get started. So can you just tell us some of the approaches that you've applied to improve workforce diversity at a strategic level?
Yes, so this year I've been a very big journey for us. We've been running up now for 20 years. It's 20 years I think it is now. We have gone up through a massive journey. And again, I've been working in the disability field for 26 years. So I'm old dog now in the industry. So, but in that journey, we've learned a lot of what we've been doing, and I think of that. We still have a lot more to do as well. So it's things like recruitment. Our recruitment practices and making sure that they are inclusive as possible, and that goes right up through into the workforce. It right up through to the application process, and making sure that is absolutely the wording on it is strategically aligned with everyone else. It's sort of visible if they've got a impairment. It's all those sort of things that you need to think about, as well as the interview process. Now during this, we send out the questions beforehand, in terms of the day beforehand to disabled people and non-disabled people that have got there. And to get a real benefit from it, and we have found it really encouraging, because you're not going to have I always think that a person going up for a job interview, whatever else, you're not going to get best out of them if it's like a sales pitch and you don't really know exactly, you could say something wrong. during my time in applying for jobs, and now that's been a very long time now, but I went through back in the day, and this is 20 odd years ago. Did I went through 39 job interviews and didn't get one. So that is, and okay, this was a long time ago, but because of my stammer or whatever else, it just wasn't there, and that's what I've been leading from the front on this, really, and making in terms of our charity and T alliances, the recruitment processes are up to speed as well, really. So just making sure that everything aligns, and there's a specific example of this of one of our programs, disability sports coaches, the inclusive activity leaders, where we make sure that whole process, and this is getting up coaches on board and training them as coaches and leaders, things like that, and is making sure that the process is complete, and that even goes through to the training courses that we deliver. Well, not we up to that we get them to do level 1, level 2 multi-skills, multi-sport courses, and it's even working with them to make sure they're inclusive in what they do. So it's working with the entire sector to make sure that is right, and the same person or whatever has not got a bad a bad experience in the sector. And I'm really pleased to shout that 40% of our workforce are disabled people. So it's coming directly up from that.
Thank you, Pete. That's yeah, absolutely great. You said around them kind of interview application processes, really ensuring that they're correct, develop that, you said, at a strategic level. I think just building on that now. My next question is around, what do you think strategic leaders need to do to make a difference for workforce diversity? And that can obviously be at CEO, board level, commissioning level. But yeah, love to get you your thoughts around that.
There's a number of different different ways that this is do this, but it's having the main thing is having a clear vision and a commitment on your the say people on your force, and include the same people in that as well. So not just going, hey, not just people into the board room or whatever else, going, this is what it is, but it's making sure that there. Now we have two at a board level. We have a number of people now on the board. We also have two parents and carers that are on the board as well, and that's because a lot of our users or a lot of our beneficiaries, they have severe learning disabilities, non-verbal, whatever else. It was struggling for them to be on the board directly, but it's good that we have a voice of the person, or coming via another route, but it's good to have those off board. And the other thing ways is, you know, okay, we have been in this industry for years, but it's, you know, gauging with those stakeholders in the industry, so they might know more than you about a certain thing. Getting advice could upset, so working collaboratively in terms of that as well. And the other thing I'd say, and I know the alliance of this have got a thing, but the investing in training and development of the people. And the other thing, there are other programs out there called Just to Work, which supports the same people in the workplace and making sure you know exactly what's going on, but speaking to that individual. Every ability is different. Mine is different than another person's. But if you speak, you know, if you speak to that person, you get a better idea of what they need.
Absolutely. Again, we know each other quite well. You know, I've got lived experience. So as you said, there a lot there around that representation, collaboration, ensuring obviously that you link into access to work and other things around to really help. But yeah, you started with that kind of clear vision and making sure that disabled people are represented within there. So thank you so much. That is all the questions
Thank you very much.
for today. So no, thank you for your time, Pete, and obviously Rob, for sharing obviously your thoughts, your ideas, your lived experience, and obviously some kind of solutions there. I'm now going to hand over to Emma, who is our strategic lead for our Include to Improve program. So I will leave it with yourself, Emma.
Thanks, Andrew. Good morning, everyone. My name is Emma McKenna, and I'm the Strategic Lead at Activity Alliance, and I'd like to also introduce Amy.
Hi. Yep. Hi, everyone. My name's Amy. I'm an occupational therapist and the programme lead for Include to Improve at Sport for Confidence.
Thanks. Can we have the next slide, please? So first of all, it's great that we're getting the chance finally to talk about this programme, and we'd like to give you a bit of an introduction and background to the programme first. So ultimately, Include to Improve, or I2I, we've coined it, is about creating opportunities for disabled people to take part, volunteer and work in the sport and physical activity sector. It's a 2-year programme led in collaboration with Activity Alliance and Sport for Confidence, and it's funded by the Sport England Recover and Reinvent Fund. It's not about creating brand new initiatives, but it is about improving the existing services that exist in the sector, but also create new inclusive solutions that ensure everyone feels like they belong in sport and physical activity. The fund was brought about to address some of the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic that meant that disabled people were hit hardest, and obviously the cost of living crisis, which is ongoing, which has affected disabled people's engagement with sport and physical activity. Can we move on to the next slide? We've been working hard behind the scenes so far to get the foundations in place to ensure the success of the programme. The Include to Improve team were recruited on and onboarded in Q4 of last year, and the team was complete by the end of the year. The team includes myself, the Strategic Lead Activity Alliance, with 2 programme advisors, Anna and Frankie. And at Sport for Confidence, we've got Amy, who you've met, and also 2 senior occupational therapists, Millie and Megan, and 3 peer support workers, Suzanne, Isabel, and Jess. The image shows a recent meeting at London with some of the team. And it also includes Pasha, Frankie's guide dog, who is very much part of our team. Once the team was established, we then looked at rebranding so that our name reflected our aims and principles of the programme. So we moved from Recover and Reinvent to Include to Improve. We set up some programme management documents and systems to ensure that with two organisations working together, that we've got effective communication, effective ways of working, and we can really cement that partnership. We've also spent a lot of time doing very in-depth scoping and research so we can really get a deep understanding of the landscape to ensure that everything is informed and we know that we're heading in the best direction. And we finally have also recruited our evaluation partners, an organisation called Ask, and they are going to assist our evaluation, direction, learnings, and support the sustainability of the programme. And I'm going to hand over to Amy for the next slide.
Thank you, Emma. So Peter, you were talking about earlier about vision. This is our vision for Include to Improve. So our end goal really is to influence change at a system level to increase high quality opportunities for disabled people to take part, volunteer and work in sports and physical activities. As a starting point, we're creating a lived experience network and a strategic partners network, and these will share information with each other and work together to find out what changes or improvements are needed, as well as elevate best practice. Me and Emma will tell you a little bit more about these networks in the next slides. From listening and learning to both of these networks, we will facilitate activities with disabled people and organisations from the sport and physical activity sector, and this might include things like testing and learning activities, developing and sharing practical resources, and supporting the delivery of pilot schemes or initiatives. And not next slide, because we're already on the next slide. So
So Amy mentioned about a strategic partner network. So the reason we're having that as a key part of the programme is because we know that there's already great work happening in the sector, and we know we can improve opportunities by listening and learning from the sector, and supporting organisations that want to come on that journey with us, who are committed to disabled people's inclusion in the sport and physical activity sector at every level. So we want to work together, share learnings so that we can have that greater impact and influence and elevate areas of best practice, but identify and really address the barriers that exist. Who can join? Well, any organisation in the sport and physical activity sector that wants to come along on this journey and shares the values of eye to eye. And what will be involved? It is about sharing knowledge and experience to create sustainable, inclusive solutions, empower and engage disabled people. There'll be different ways to be involved, and not every organisation will be involved in the same way and at the same level. So it might be a little bit of opinions, it might be focus groups, it might be connecting with our learning and evaluation, it might be test and learn, trying new solutions, but it will involve connecting regularly with the lived experience network and the eye to eye team. If you want to get involved, you can see information there on how to connect. So there's a QR code or a link to access a survey, and I believe that link has also been put in the chat. If you have any problems though, there is also an email address specifically for the programme, which you can see below, include to improve activityalliance.org.uk. If you're listening to the recording or accessing this later, it will also be sent out as part of the slides as well. And handing over to Amy to talk about the Lived Experience Network.
thank you, Emma. So reflecting what Emma's talking about for the Lived Experience Network, so why? I think we all know, sitting in this virtual room, that the lived experiences to disabled people are essential to finding solutions and influencing change. And we want to hear from lots of individuals from diverse backgrounds with a wide range of views and experiences. People who wish to join do not have to have taken part in anything like this before or be physically active. The criteria for joining is anyone who is 18 or over and is a disabled person or considers themselves to be disabled, someone who has a long-term physical or mental health condition or impairment, and this includes people who are neurodivergent or may experience social or behavioural difficulties, or it may be a family member, carer or supporter of a disabled person who may need support to express their views directly or share their experiences. So what will be involved in the Lived Experience Network? So through the Lived Experience Network, we will listen, learn and work together with members, and similarly to the Strategic Partners Network, will provide a range of opportunities and ways for members to get involved and to share their experiences. We'll create an environment where members feel supported at all stages of involvement, and their voices, their lived experience and their expertise are valued, and this will include payment for people's time and contributions. We'll create a safe, respectful and trustworthy environment where everyone has the opportunity to feel a sense of belonging, and the sharing of lived experiences will be meaningful and influence change. So if you wish to get involved, like Emma said, I think a link's been shared in the chat to the survey, which has an option at the end to join the network. Alternatively, you can scan the QR code that's on your screen now. And I think it's important to mention you can choose to complete both surveys without joining the networks, which will still provide us with really valuable information to inform the programme's next steps. And as Emma said, we will send out more information and recruitment documents with the recording of this presentation, which you can share with your wider networks. Next slide, please. So that's it from me and Emma. We just want to say a really big thank you for giving us this space to officially launch Include to Improve. If you have got any questions, the email address that's up on the screen now, if you send them there, and you can connect with myself, Emma and the team, and we want to hear from lots of people that want to get involved. So please do and support us on this journey. So I'm going to hand back to Andrew now, who's going to close the seminar.
Thank you very much. So as I bring today's session to an end, we're going to put another link in the chat for you, just so that we can gather a little bit of insight from yourselves about how today's session was. So that's just gone in there now. Thank you, Jamie. Seamless. So yeah, if you could just take a few moments to share that back with us. But it does bring us to an end today. I have seen there's been lots of conversation in the chat, some questions. So thank you for that. But hopefully you'll agree, we've heard from lots of people from lots of different sectors who shared lived experience solutions and ideas about how we really ensure that we create a diverse workforce. And again, Activity Alliance, we want to ensure that all disabled people belong in the workforce, and we're keen to work with you. So a little bit like me and Emma was just saying, if you've got any specific projects, initiatives, ideas that you feel that we can help to support, then please do share. And I know there are some asks in the chat as well about connections. But the final bits from me, again, just once again to thank our speakers for joining us with sharing their time, sharing their experiences. And also for everyone else that attended today. Thank you for your time, and hopefully we'll see you again very soon.